Hi, everybody. So, here's a question for you. Are you beginning to experience any new sights, sounds, emotions, or knowings? If you are, you're not alone. The first 7 episodes of Spiritual Diner have likely awakened something in you. They may have accelerated your spiritual journey or just opened you up in ways that you maybe didn't think you were able to be opened. Either way, they have led you to your introduction to the Clairs. Maybe you are someone who can read the emotions of others. Perhaps you know the outcome of future events. Possibly you hear voices of purposeful sounds no one else can hear. It may be that you can touch an object and tell things about it through space and time. If any of that is happening, or you want to know what to do when it does, make sure you tune in to the rest of this episode and watch to the end, because we've got some books that have inspired our spiritual journeys, and one of them is from a king. So with that, we welcome you to the Spiritual Diner. Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Diner, a live stream about consciousness, personal growth, manifesting, spirituality, learning to love yourself, expanding community, and so much more.
And each week we whip up a mindful menu of fresh and healthy perspectives to nourish your mind, body, and spirit as we continue on this sizzling, ever evolving journey called life.
I am Vash Bodhi. I'm a journalist, a manifester, healer, but I like to say coach, and a recipient of messages from a spirit guide.
I'm Tammy Reyes. I'm a teacher and intuitive and a hopeful dreamer of a world full of love that involves luxury travel and playing with cute, fuzzy animals. But mostly, I want to be of service to those that are interested in developing their intuition.
Together, we make up Spiritual Diner, and we welcome you to today's show. Today's special is just about ready. Woohoo! Always nice to give you something to talk about.
Yay! Okay. Well, Bosch psychics, intuitives, mediums, and other spiritual folk utilize one or more of the following clairs that we're going to talk about today. And maybe you do too. We're all born with an innate knowledge of one or more of the clairs that we're going to be talking about today, but it's usually stripped from our consciousness by about age 7 or 8, maybe a little bit longer than that. And why does that happen? It happens because when a youngster comes to an adult and says something like, there was Granny sitting on the edge of my bed last night, but Granny's been dead for 20 years and the kid never knew Granny. And then that's an opportunity for the parent or the adult to either honor that, which is what we want to do, or to dismiss it by saying, oh, it's just your imagination, or you've been reading that National Enquirer again. And this is really damaging to people who do have a natural propensity for the clairs. And so the process of reclaiming those clairs and psychic abilities can take years. Some people find that the clairs are just a natural extension of themselves and their personality, or it's a skill to assist them on their spiritual journey. For some, they may be compelled to learn everything that they can about them and share it with other people as part of our remembering or life mission or soul contract. And I say remembering because as we learn about the different clairs and different psychic phenomena, it's all part of ancient knowledge that we all came in with, but we don't recognize or remember it. Although some people do tap into those senses more easily. And so that's why we're doing the clairs. And
Yes, indeed. Because it's important to learn all of these.
yeah, alrighty then. Okay, we're going to start with the very first Clair, which is the most common, and it's clairsentience. And clairsentience refers to being able to read the emotions of others. Being able to read the emotions of others. It's the ability to perceive emotional or psychic energy that goes beyond our five senses. And these messages come as a feeling or a gut knowing about the energy of a person, or maybe a group or a whole room. And this also includes being able to hone in to the emotions of animals. And I kind of think it's a superpower because knowing another's emotions helps tune into them in a way that is useful for you and for them. It builds trust, it empowers both people, and also it fosters empathy. And when you come upon something with your clairsentience and it resonates true for you, that is an indication that you're on your spiritual path. And so there's lots of examples to emphasize that. So with clairsentience being the able to read emotions of others, there's some things to keep in mind with that. And we're going to talk about protection as we talk about clairsentience, psychic protection, but that will apply to all of the different clairs that we cover today. So it's really important when you start to develop intuition in your clairsentience that you learn psychic protections and strategies to shield yourself from the energy that you may encounter. Because, for example, I can feel the energy of anyone that I tune into, whether it's friends, family, and a group is different. An airport is really challenging. And so I have had to learn specific strategies and tools to not go off the deep end, not get sick, or not go wacky. Um, and so I want to share one little thing that happened when I was a new uh, intuitive. And I was within a group of about 20 people in a circle, and we were being led through um, a meditation by our teacher. And everyone in that group was at a different place, different ages, different backgrounds. There's a shaman, there's just different people from all over.
Mhm.
Um, but there was a woman who was sitting across from me, and my judgy voice said, "Gee, she kind of looks like a witch." And this is me because she had a mole and she had that chin thing, like Dorothy's witch and the Wizard of Oz and everything. But I just missed it. But I didn't have my protection on, and so I'll explain that protection in just a moment. But as time went on, this lady's energy affected me in a negative way because I didn't have my protection up. And I felt like I was going to have number one, number two, and throw up all at the same time. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I breathed my way out of it. Afterwards, when I talked to my teacher about it, we both knew that it was because I didn't have my protection up. So the simplest thing to put your protection up, because you don't want to take on the emotions and baggage of others, is to imagine that you are encased in a shell or an egg. And within that, you are totally safe with your own energy. But outside of that is everything else, but it cannot permeate you because you have this psychic protection up. And psychic protection can be as simple as visualizing something like this protective barrier. As you start to develop your clairsentience, things seem more dramatic. You feel things more, and you might develop an intolerance to certain things like violence, violent movies, certain kind of harsh language, Karens and Kevins and things like that. You become more sensitive to cruelty and that kind of an energy. You want to jump in for anything before I keep on yakking?
Well, I mean, it's just always interesting to hear your perspective on your journey, and as we share it with other people, because everyone's going to have their own, could potentially have their own experience. Um, I know people who are watching or will watch have had that experience of sitting on the edge of the bed, talking to grandma, or playing with, ghosts and spirits. And different ones have had the parents say nothing to them about it and just let it go. Others have, said, oh, you should be able to do that. Others have really had their parents, squash it. So,
Yeah.
as we talk about all of these things, it's important that people really pull as much information as they can and apply it in such a way that we make a better world for our spiritual beings who are coming along, who have these capabilities. So so thank you so much for sharing so much about your journey, because that's so important. And
Yeah, I don't want other people to have to go through tough things that I experienced. And that's why we're doing spiritual diners, just to learn all of those tools. Because you're not weird or wacky. This is a very natural part of who we are. It just gets dismissed. Or some people might not ever have an interest to tune into it, but
mhm.
we do. Um, I want to share a brief story about a lady who I was working with, giving her one-on-one lessons to develop her intuition.
Uh-huh.
And we kind of grew to be friends. And her husband, my husband, the four of us went out for a Christmas event here where you go into these old adobe buildings that are 200 to 300 years old, because Monterey used to be the first capital of California. And so there was a lot of rich Spaniards and Mexicans that built these wonderful places. So anyway, we're going in there, and because they're old, they're going to be haunted, and everything pretty much is haunted. We can talk about that another time, but she had to go to the bathroom. And when she went into the bathroom of this one building, she came out all upset, freaking out, saying, "There's ghosts in there. I can't go to the bathroom. There's ghosts in there." Well, we all went to the bathroom, and we were fine. So that is an example. Her freaking out is an example of not being grounded and rooted enough in the protections that we need to have so that we don't react in such a reactionary way, if that makes sense. So you can be clairsentient all the time, but you have to learn to work with it and not take on the energies and emotions of other people, because, like I said, it can make you sick or wacky.
Yeah, and I mean, we're doing this show in particular so that when people do find themselves experiencing these things, that they're not overwhelmed. I mean, I can imagine her, if there were ghosts in there that she could see and she wasn't used to actually being able to see them, that could be a little overwhelming, um, whether it be the first time or whether it be the sheer number of them. So, what we're asking is give yourself grace and be prepared to give other people grace as we all, go and grow. So I think that that's super important. Thank you
Yes,
for that.
it's a very forgiving adventure as we go on our spiritual path, because everything comes back to love. And then we're learning more and more about HSPs, or highly sensitive people, which I'm excited to see more in the news and just in different ways that's being brought to our attention. Because when
Well,
we're, go ahead.
if I just want to sort of add here that
Yeah,
when we talk about, you know, uh, how do you say, a
a
clairsentient
sentient person.
person, the Long Island medium is someone that comes to mind. So if you guys are wondering, like, as we go through these clairs, like, who are the types of people that fit into these categories, these she is one of those people. She is a clairsentient person and is able to use her gifts in many ways to help other people. I also want to make sure that we start off by letting you guys know, as these abilities start to come about, you do have power. You should know that you have the power to turn off this ability. This is like one of the most important things to know and to understand, because if you know that you can turn it off, it will allow you to welcome it with a little bit more freedom. And that's really truly the goal here, to welcome your new gifts. You
Yeah,
can turn it off.
and you need to. Because if you're operating 24/7 in this other space, in this other dimension, it's not healthy. We are here on Earth as humans in the 3D. So ideally, in the little world where I live of happiness up in my head, it would be a balance. It would be a balance of going from your intuition or clairsentience into your normal 3D reality. You have to, or else you go nuts.
And for those people who may be tuning in and are not super clear about what you mean when you talk about the 3D, I just want to bring up the Maslow's triangle or hierarchy. I don't like to call it a hierarchy because it implies that you have to move up in ways. you can be anywhere and jump to any of these places. But when Tammy's talking about the 3D, she's talking about, really being concerned with your physical needs and safety and just basic needs, as opposed to being in a place where you can start talking about, spiritual awakenings and transcendence, etc. But that's all important to know and to keep in mind as you think about your ability with your new power to turn it off, so you know that you can control it, to then be able to turn it back on, which is again another key factor as you get to play around with and manipulate your new abilities. And then also you have the ability to set parameters. If you're someone who can do certain things, you can set within yourself and those that you may be communicating with the ability to say, look, I'm only doing this between these hours. I'm only doing this when I sit in that chair. I'm only doing this when I'm wearing these particular clothes. Otherwise, stay away from me.
Or you've got that hairdo of the Long Island medium.
Exactly.
But sometimes these things do happen when we're unprepared. And so we're just planting the seed that that's okay, understand what it is, and move forward consciously with protection and awareness.
Exactly. And that sense of control. So that's really super important.
Okay.
We were going to go on and talk about now highly sensitive people. Yes?
Absolutely, because it's something that we're hearing more and more of about. It's been around for about the last 30 years, but it's something that's come up in the last year for me that clarified a lot of things, like I am one. That explains a lot. And I started to see this in other people too. And it's 20% of the population. So share what you wanted to about the highly sensitive people, because it's so important as we're developing intuition and clairs.
Yeah. So a highly sensitive person, or an HSP, is a term coined by psychologist Elaine Aron. And people high in a personality trait known as sensory processing sensitivity, or SSP, they display increased emotions. Let me bring this back up so everyone can see this. They display increased emotional sensitivity, stronger reactivity to both external and internal stimuli like pain, hunger, light, and noise. And they're also known to have a complex inner life, which, someone's going to have to define to me what a complex inner life is. Because to me, I have many, many ways of looking at that. But yeah, so highly sensitive persons. You want to talk about that some more?
Yeah, I'm excited too, because when we consider that 20% of the population is this way, we can glean so much from that. As a teacher, we can understand better how to meet their learning needs. If our mate is highly sensitive, well, that would explain a lot of things. And a complex inner life means we're always thinking about things. So as I'm looking out over my window and seeing this amazing sunrise and light shimmering on the trees, I'm thinking of the power of the tree. I'm thinking of the gratitude I feel for this amazing view and sunrise, and so on. It's like we're internalizing things all the time to make it have a place, to have it for the world to have some kind of order, because everything is so emotionally tied and we're so sensitive. Sensitive in different ways, like when you say, boy, you really suck at that sport, Tammy. Well, that's one kind of hurt, but understanding that I'm a highly sensitive person make me get over that a little bit better. Like just realizing, oh, I'm sensitive and I can understand where that person's coming from, or they're just a jerk. Um, and so that's a little bit about highly sensitive people and the sensitivity. For me, what's really challenging is noises, loud noises, like those motorcycle people across the street.
Well, there's misophonia, which is a sound sensitivity that people have, and I know quite a few people with that. So, is there an overlap? I mean, because what you described about like always thinking about things sounds like, some things that happen with people that have like ADHD, or some of these other things where like there's just always, like, people sometimes call it monkey brain, where there's just always things going on in the brain. And is there like
Yes.
overlaps with it all?
Yes, there is overlap with it. And as I have learned to understand all the components of a highly sensitive person,
Hmm.
there's some learning issues involved with that, which is why I learn best by doing it, by somebody showing me maybe 1 or 10 times, but also by doing it. And it goes back to that complex inner life, which is different for everybody. For some people, it could be the monkey brain that never shuts off.
Hmm.
But I know for me personally, when I'm looking at the trees or, staring at nature or reading a book, I'm always thinking about how can it be brought to a level of love so that everyone's getting along and things go the way I want them to in that little happy place where I live in my head. That's the inner complex life, is always seeking out a deeper meaning to take you to this next level. But it does cross over with different, we call them learning disabilities or challenges. But I just think kids are changing. Kids have been changing. And I think it started with our parents' generation with the hippies, and then us with our generation. But I'm the very last month of the baby boomers, so I'm not quite sure where I fall in. But you're a year younger, so you do fall into the category of you're the generation, if you want to, that's going to plant the seed for our Earth's evolution, for planetary growth and human growth.
Do you know that I had a conversation with someone this week and learned that the baby boomers actually start ended earlier, and then there's a generation called, I think, the Jones generation, which fits between Gen X and the baby boomers. It started because we realized in looking at it this weekend, which is so exciting, that like my parents who were born in the 40s were not part of the baby boomers. Like the baby boomer generation ended. We're going to talk about this on the next episode. I'm going to get into the specifics because we talked about it. But we learned that there was another generation called the Jones generation,
Oh, wow.
which is really where I fit, which was sort of crazy because we were like, oh, keeping up with the Joneses. But
I
we're,
know.
yeah, I know. I'm gonna get that information, and we're gonna talk about that next time. But keeping in mind with what you just said, we do have another group of sort of beings that are coming around. There's like this next wave of children, and some of you may have heard about these kids. First of all, there's the indigo children. These are children that were born in the 70s. Some of them were actually highly intelligent, very empathic. They are perceived as sometimes strange just because of their new abilities. And back in the 70s, as you were saying, coming out of the hippie generation, these kids were still just a little different. They have a really high level of self-definition and purpose. And in many cases, they are actually very, very intuitive. So those
Yeah.
are the indigo children.
Imagine not fostering that in a kid and what that does to their personality and their creativity.
Hmm. And then imagine what would happen if you do encourage that. Um,
Yeah.
I'm really, it's lovely that our journeys are so different, but that we're here to be able to talk about this because I have a whole crew and tribe of people that have been raising the indigo children and welcomed the crystal children, because after the indigo children came the crystal children who were born in like the 90s and between 90 and 2010. And these kids added to what the indigo had and morphed it, right? They're extremely forgiving, but very sensitive. So when you talk about the HSPs, you probably have a lot of these kids coming in with those capabilities,
Mhm.
but being sensitive, but like forgiving, right?
Yeah.
Their purpose is to lead us back to a place of love. Many of them can manipulate energy in very different ways, which, of course, I relate to and love. And a lot of them have psychic or telepathic abilities where they're able to communicate in ways that are nonverbal,
Yeah.
right?
Isn't that beautiful? Because it kind of to me is creating a new platform, a new way of moving forward that isn't so the way our educational system is, you have to learn this particular content to take this test. But it has nothing to do with reality or improving your life. It's really just about getting more money if you do okay on the tests. So imagine how these kids feel when their little person, that little spirit inside them, is being squelched all the time. And so it's important for us to be aware of this so that we can nurture it. And we don't have to understand, but just don't squeeze the life force out of them when they're sharing all this intuitive information with us.
Wow, you said quite a few things. So I think that you can do both. I think you can educate people and then still nurture their spiritual sides, which is important because we got to make sure we have an educated population. Otherwise, we're doomed to repeat histories and all kinds of things.
Yes.
In terms of the next level of children, we have the rainbow children. Now, the rainbow children are born like in the 2000s, but they typically are children of crystal children, meaning that some of that information is passed down, but also a lot of that nurturing and understanding has been put into place. So when we talk about nurturing, know that there's a whole, subset of the population that has grown up in this way and are raising those children that are helping to lead the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Rainbow children are strong. They typically are fearless in so many different ways, mainly because they have the nurturing and the support of their family, right?
Yes.
Uh, Loving and caring, because love is the answer. And then they are also really pretty amazing manifestors. Other research I've done showed that these rainbow children, a lot of them come in without a lot of the karmic, um,
Yeah.
like
Baggage.
that a lot of people have come in before, which is showing us that as humanity is moving forward, we are evolving as a species because it's represented in our children.
Yes. And if you doubt that, then look at 10 years ago. Think of where you were back in 2013 and what was happening in the world. And then compare it to what's happening now. You probably are going to see evolution. Pardon. You're going to see growth of the human spirit and awareness. That's exciting. And I think that's why we're here. I think that's our mission, why we were born at this time, to assist with all that.
Right on. Right on.
Okay,
Uh,
so go ahead.
I was just going to say, so make sure that you encourage, if not your children, other children that are in that indigo, crystal, rainbow, or other. I mean, because, someone can show up and still have abilities and not be one of those children. Create a
Right.
space. Create a
Okay.
space.
And I'm thinking if you're a parent or adult that is encountering this with your child or student or youngster, just roll with it. Be open, smile, come from a place of love. You don't have to get it, but that coming from a place of love is so, so powerful.
Yes.
And I see the changes, even though I'm out of the classroom now, I see the changes in kids. We've got a little girl who's like 43 now, but she was in Ray's very first year of teaching, and I was a student teacher there. And so we know her. She came to our wedding. We went to her wedding, and she's just a perfect little example of that new breed
Mm-hmm.
coming up.
Right.
And now she has a kid, and that little kid might be kind of challenging to her, but I see it differently. I see him as one of these that we were just talking about. What is it? The rainbow? Yeah, the rainbow children,
Yeah.
where it may be confusing or perplexing to the adults on how to reach them. But really, if you come from a place of love, just think, well, whatever, I might not get it, but I love the little tyke. That opens up the freedom for them to continue exploring who they are and their psychic gifts, which
Yep.
may include clairvoyance.
Yes.
Clairvoyance is the one we talk about the most, and it refers to perceiving or seeing images or events in the future or beyond our normal five sensory observations. It means clear vision, and it also means it's when you know that something's going to happen, but you don't know why you know that that thing is going to happen. But with understanding and practice, you can learn to trust your clairvoyance, and it becomes a natural gift. We think of Nostradamus as being someone who was very clairvoyant because he declared that certain things were going to happen in the future. And a lot of people follow that and believe that to be so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely remember getting the teachings of Nostradamus back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple things that he said that I'm still waiting for. So
Yeah.
whenever something goes on, I'm like, is that one of his teachings?
So there's a gift of the clairs right there, is being able to look at that and analyze it and think about it and feel your way through it in a way
Mhm.
that enriches you and makes you smarter. One thing that I think of with clairvoyance is, since it's something about projecting and knowing from the future, is elections. There's been times where I absolutely knew who was going to win the election, but I can't prove it. There's nothing I can say to prove it, but by golly, it happened. And another one is when I've been on hiring boards trying to hire a new teacher or something, and I get a sense, or maybe someone gets a sense of, I don't know if this person's going to cut the mustard or if they're really going to work the way we want them to. Does that make sense? Do you have experience with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, and I want to talk about the difference between an inkling and a knowing, so that people can help discern the
Okay.
difference. But
Okay.
I mean, like I'm in situations now where, I've had clear feelings about what someone was actually going to just do, um, and then watch them do it, and you're like,
Right.
like that
Okay.
was the thing that I said that, anyway, yeah,
Okay, I hope I can clarify this well and
yeah,
make it make sense. But an inkling is just a little idea. It's passing. You're not giving a lot of attention to it. You're not pulling in all your psychic awareness or just common sense to evaluate that person or situation.
hmm
Um, and a knowing is when you're sitting there thinking, I know that person's not going to do good on this job because maybe you know of their reputation from another place, or you know them and know that that's not the right person.
hmm
But you want to give the benefit of the doubt. You want to hope that we're all on this journey together. But an inkling is less serious than a knowing. When you have the knowing that this person isn't going to be a match for the job, that's something that's much more certain, and you're going to feel it more in your body, especially in your core, in your solar plexus area. When something is true or not true, your body will let you know. And for a lot of people, it happens in your solar plexus area when something is, yes, that's true and right, and no, it's not.
And this is good information for people to really be able to take along with them, because being able to discern those two is going to help strengthen both,
Yes.
right? I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
you're going to get
Yeah.
used to where things feel, and then be able to see how it plays out, and then grow and trust yourself more. And I want that to happen.
Yeah, and, again, the psychic tools come into play. So one time when I was new at developing my intuition, and I am very, very clairvoyant. It's something that, like the clairsentience, I've had to learn to control. And I woke up one morning thinking there was gonna be this big disaster at the air base by where I lived, and I was really emotional and annoying, and it upset my husband. And after I went to work, he called, my psychic teacher to say, Tammy's freaking out about this. And there was no terrible disaster that day. I felt like a big idiot, but it's useful. And I bring that up because it was how I learned to see and feel and know the difference between something that's really going to happen, or the chances are really good because of my knowing, or maybe it won't. And so I don't need to spaz and get all hyper about it.
hmm
Um, Now,
Uh,
the clairvoyance is perceiving things in the future, but the two things that don't work are picking winning lottery numbers and um, gambling. Those things don't work. And I always get asked, well, if you're psychic, why can't you pick the winning lottery numbers? Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
there's so many factors that go into um, the clairs, right? And sometimes even articulating something can change the outcome of it, um, to the point where there are many times when you just don't want to say anything because you don't want to influence what could happen, or what you say. Like, that person's not going to be good at the job, but if you say anything, all of a sudden, like, you're in a whole nother world of responsibilities, reactions, new trajectories.
Mhm.
So sometimes you do have to sit on what you may or may not know. We did have a question come through, and there's absolutely no pressure on you at this point, but just in case anything comes in, Shannon asks, Tammy, is there anything going on you can tell me that I need to know of things going on or might go on?
Um,
So,
is this person implying in her own personal life or on a wider scale?
well, I think we can ask that question. So let's get a clarifying response,
Okay.
Shannon. But thank you for
Is,
that question.
the answer to both is going to be yes. There's something within you that made you ask that question or tune into this or be open to the idea of the clairs or anything that we're dishing out at spiritual diner. So that is a shift in your awareness, or perhaps it's a growth in your awareness with more to come. The more you're curious, the more you're going to learn, and the more opportunities are going to come to you to learn. And then on a larger scale, the answer is yes, things are totally happening. And I can't wait to address in the future the concept of new earth and the shift. We are going through changes in your own personal life, in your community, your country, and globally. We are in a huge time of great change and alteration of our consciousness. Thus, we're learning about the clairs.
Right on. Exactly. I'm going to move us forward because it's time for us to go into clairaudience. Now,
Okay.
clairaudience is perceiving as if by hearing what is inaudible. Like you can hear internal or external voices from guides, also footsteps or other noises when no one else is there, maybe a sound from a spirit that serves as a symbol. It could be anything that has to do with audio. I think I was telling you this weekend I met someone whose mother passed away, and when she did, he was able to hear these doves flying to the point where he was really looking for where it was coming from, right? Uh,
Interesting.
as a person, I get extremely clear sounds and extremely clear um, guidance from my spirit guide. And we're not doing this particular Claire, but at a certain point, I actually felt pushed to go do certain things at a certain time when my voice was really clear that I should be moving. Um, so clairaudience, again, it is dealing with the audio, and there are certain people that are on the scene who are actually, yeah, you know James,
James,
don't you?
James Van Prague.
Mhm.
He's a good one. But when we talk about James Van Prague or Nostradamus or the big-haired medium, or the long-eyed, the her, I just think she's a hoot. But anyway, when we talk about these people as examples, it's true they do possess that clair, but they're probably doing more than one, and those clairs are coming and going all the time.
Mhm.
Now, I only experience clairaudience in my head, like that eternal voice. It doesn't happen externally for me. So
Interesting.
that's interesting that it does for you, and that the fellow that you encountered this weekend in New York heard doves, because doves often come through at a funeral or a returning home end of life celebration. There's always doves. That happened at Ray's grandma's service too.
Wow.
Totally normal for me, and maybe it's going to be normal for you guys too.
Yeah. And if so, we definitely want to know about it. So Shannon did reply. She just replied with thank you. But we did ask, were you asking this question about something very specific? Was it something, was it just a general thing? So if you do want more clarification, we do welcome that. So thank
Yeah.
you again for that.
Okay. The fourth Claire. The fourth Claire is claircognizance or
Yes.
clear knowing. It's that feeling that you get when you just know something without having any idea how you know it. It isn't a knowing projected into the future like clairvoyance, but it's how I know when I'm doing a reading about the person's past or their parents or, their narcissistic mother or alcoholic brother or whatever. It's our higher self or our spirit guides, helpers, putting information out there for us into our mind as a way of guiding us. And one psychic medium fellow that's popular right now that exemplifies this is Tyler Henry. He's a young fellow out of LA. But I know that he does multiple clairs, including writing, which is something that
Ooh.
we didn't include in today's clairs. But
Mhm.
he does represent the claircognizance. Yeah.
Yeah, so when people are saying things like, "Oh, I got a download,"
What's that about?
I mean, would we put that
Mhm.
into claircognizance? I mean,
Yes, but it also makes me go back to that. There's more than one clair happening at a time.
okay.
So when I receive information from my spirit guides, it's in more than one form. I'm tapping into the emotions of another. I need a concrete example. So let's say I'm just going to use my neighbor next door and I'm doing a reading on her. I can tap into her emotions um, and in a way that may foretell some aspects of her future. That's clairsentience. Claircognizance is when I know certain things about her that I shouldn't have known, but it's not projected in the future.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Because a lot of people just use the word clairvoyance as an umbrella term, but there's really four different of these clairs. And as you learn about them and develop them, you start to use more than one.
Mhm.
As you know, for example, me, except I don't hear external voices. When you do hear external voices,
Tammy,
that's really food for thought. That is something
Tammy,
to think about.
Tammy. Tammy. I'm just kidding. No, but what you've said is just really super important. It's that there are multiple ones. I love
You
that I
could
can
really
actually
mess with people's
perceive it
head,
right now.
huh?
We can talk about spiritual things and still have a sense of humor. But yeah, I mean, it's important to us to understand, like you said, that multiple ones will be in use. But yeah, when people say, "Oh, I got to download," it could be any of these that are coming through for them. Um, but I always just love that term. So Shannon did respond. She said, "Things with me." She goes, "I feel like I'm not always catching on."
Um, Tell me her name again.
Shannon.
Shannon. You're being really hard on yourself, Shannon. And I bet you've got that little voice going, "You're not good enough. Try harder, whatever." You know what? You are on your path and you're participating as fully as you should be at this time. Don't be hard on yourself. Just open yourself up to new experiences and learning more because where we're going as a people, as a society, like as humans, is to a different place where we are using our sixth sense much more than we're using it now. And it's natural. It's a natural extension of us. So honor it within you. You go.
Right on. I
Um,
hope that was helpful and very good. Thank you for being so encouraging. We all on our own individual journeys and things are changing. You might
yeah.
be getting new abilities. You be present, go with it.
Yeah. And you mentioned downloads, Vosh, because that is a new word that I don't know when it came about the last few years, but a download is just kind of a new age way of saying you received information or communication.
Mhm.
And when you start on this path, you're going to be experiencing it all the time. I had it twice quite strongly in the last couple days. Once outside just doing chores,
Mhm.
I got a download about something that's coming up. And a lot of times in the bathroom, like taking a bath or taking a shower. Like I was taking a bath yesterday. I thought, oh my God, that's really important to know. And I received a download that was appropriate for me yesterday and what I needed to do. So that really is showing that I'm just open and tapping into these different clairs, but I'm not thinking about it all the time. And
Mhm.
when I do encounter them or use them, I put up protection so that I am not affected by the person's, emotions.
It sounds like, bathing is somewhat of a meditation. So like to be in that form and that particular mode of meditation really does open one up to certain things. I get information when I drive. For some reason, for me, driving and being connected to a car and speed really, I don't know what it is, but I'm able to do certain things. When I lived in New York, if I needed to write, I would often go and get on the train, and I would get on express trains that I knew would go at least large and long stretches where there wouldn't be stops, so that I could get into a zone. And I would write a first draft of something either on my phone or something, and then I would go home and then rewrite it to get, certain things done.
That is an excellent example. Movement, is like on a train or like that, does kind of promote that. Just as water, and I think we talked before about the symbolism of water. We'll talk about it in the future. But so you get these downloads sometimes when you're least expecting of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I can't think of an example, at least right now, of when I said, "Give me a download." It doesn't work that way. It comes.
You have to put a quarter in the machine.
And then a little card comes out.
Yeah.
I think when we put ourselves in a new situation, in a challenging, not scary or bad, but a new situation, that's an opportunity for downloads because we're interacting with all this newness and everything is energy and everything is alive. And we're just tuning into that. And we can work to develop the clairs.
Yeah, we can. There's so many steps that one can take when wanting to get into and in touch with the clairs. And we've actually done some things to actually help people out. One, we've given you 7 episodes of Spiritual Diner, starting with what I think is probably one of the most important is consciousness. Being aware of your own consciousness and wanting to expand your consciousness. So totally, totally key.
Yeah, it goes back to that Leonardo da Vinci thing where the number one rule for him was curiosity.
Isn't that so very, very true? Because the point is that you kind of have to say you don't know sometimes in order for the information to come in, because then curiosity steps in and then you seek out the answers to things that you don't know. So that's super, super key. In addition to consciousness, we gave you the power of words, which helps you to say certain things like, I want to know the information. Yes.
And those words, those deliberate choices of words open up what I call our lines of consciousness, or our lines, our little telephone or communication lines that go to anything beyond our little bubble.
Absolutely.
And then we've also talked, I think it was the 3rd episode, about energy awareness, about our own personal energy and the energy of other people. And that's super important in developing your clairs. So like I said, you don't take on the emotions or baggage of somebody else. That's not what we're meant to do. It can make us sick, weigh us down, confuse us, and all kinds of things happen that don't need to happen. So energy awareness is really super important. And there could be a reason that we're tuning into our clairs and learning about them. Perhaps we had a soul contract where we wanted to come into this life to grow in that way. I know that was part of mine. Or it may have been that we stumbled upon it and free will led us to learn more and develop our clairs and overall intuition.
Yep. Also, we talked to you about being a spiritual being having a human experience. That was done specifically to make sure that you knew that the connection between these clairs and us as human beings in this plane is much wider, deeper, stronger than we might even imagine. And so as these new abilities, connections manifest, that we're not afraid of them and we actually welcome them and play around with them because they're there. And the best way to get into and explore is to go in with a sense of play.
Yeah. I think that is very important. We don't want to take any of this in too heavy a way. Although it's totally important for me and I live by it, I'm not going to be weighed down by it. When I am, When I'm what's that word? Just ruminating over something, that lets me know there's an issue that's coming up that I need to deal with, perhaps some kind of shadow aspect or some kind of healing. But
Mhm.
the clairs are all something that we come in with. It's just about whether or not we want to develop them or need to develop them. And I think we mentioned earlier that you can have more than one clair happening at the same time. That's really normal for mediums.
Absolutely. And we also talked about manifesting. Using your power of words, it is possible that you can manifest and or welcome in your connectivity to the clairs. So you can set up a manifestation to help bring them in. We can even help you with that. So,
Yeah, that's where a good coach, psychic, medium, intuitive can be of use. And um, these clairs can come and go. They're not always there. Maybe I've got clairsentience happening all the time, but I do shut it off and I can turn it back on. And that is so important that we learn those skills if we're going to pursue developing our intuition. Uh,
absolutely.
and and then the last thing is sometimes, but not always, this knowledge precedes a spiritual awakening. Spirit is like throwing little pea gravel pieces at us all the time, trying to get us to wake up and be aware. And then that doesn't work, so they throw something a little bit larger. And then when that doesn't work, they've got a big old rock.
Yes.
So it is like always a way that spirit is working with us to tap in to knowledge.
Uh-huh.
And then for real, the last thing I'm going to say is it hereditary? If you're super claircognizant or clairaudient, is that because your mom or your dad were? And that can be true, but it's not always true. It was true with James Van Prague. His grandmother, I believe, was a medium and gave him the permission to explore that side of him. And that's why he was able to do it so well, as he had such support.
I think it can be, but I think, when we talk about nature versus nurture, if she gave him the ability to welcome it in, I think that's so much more important. Well, it's so hard to say. I mean, coming from a family of people that are, really tied in and tapped in, and it's always been made aware. Um, yeah,
It's interesting, like, what relatives do we have, that had this ability, but they learned to dismiss it?
right. To find that
Right.
out from family members is really super interesting. But I think, yeah, I'm not even going to go into it because we know that it's all part of who we are anyway. So I think environment really plays a huge, huge part.
Yes. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's something we could spend an hour on. There's
I
so
know.
much to talk about, Bosch,
I know.
but
I just want to make
understanding.
sure that we remind people again that when it comes to the clairs, as they are beginning to develop, you do have the power. You have the power to turn them off. You have the power to turn them back on, and you have the power to set parameters in terms of when and where and how you use them. So, keep that in mind. Don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah, because understanding the 4 clairs could make us realize that we could be using them and not know it. It's nothing to
Mhm.
be afraid of. We're all born with these insights, but a lot of times they kind of get robbed from us or taken away, or the life force gets sucked out. So we don't even think about our sixth sense anymore.
Right.
But luckily, there's tons of great resources out there that you can find to help you grow in this way, including Spiritual Diner.
Yep. So, just to wrap out this conversation we've been having with Shannon about things and the downloads and things, she says, "How do you know when you get a download, and what should be done when you get it?"
Okay. So that would be a good one for to meet one on one with. But what you get with the download for now is just take it in. It's by no accident that message came down for you. I get that Shannon needs to write it down too. If you're not already journaling, write it down when you get these downloads. That helps take information from your subconscious uh, to help you realize what the download is really about. Does that make sense?
Yes, and we talked about this earlier, that when information is coming in, it resonates differently in your body. There's some things that are just head things, which you're like, okay, is that just me overthinking things? And then there's times when you get something when you're like, okay, this is important information. It
Oh,
feels different. It sounds different in the head. It just goes through the body differently. So
absolutely.
the important thing is to pay attention to one's own body and one's own experience to understand what different information feels like and then test it out. Like you got some information, does that resonate? Does that come true? And
Right.
that is going to help
Hey,
strengthen.
Shannon's questions are really pertinent. Those are good questions. I would definitely bring those when you want to, if you want to have some kind of psychic reading or something, because those questions are getting right to the heart of where you're at in your
Mhm.
spiritual progression and what's next for you. And
Exactly.
what's next for us might be dessert.
Yes, it absolutely is. So we thought that following up from last week's, where we talked about the different movies that were relevant and important to us for our spiritual growth, we thought that we would share some spiritual books or books that helped us along in our spiritual journey. So, why don't,
Absolutely.
yeah. So go ahead, take it away, Tammy.
Okay. My two choices may seem weird to the Western mind, but they're not. They're totally easy reads. And the first one is, I think it's going to come up as the Sri Upanishads. Sri Upanishads just refers to some ancient Vedas or Hindu text that outlines certain lessons. There's over 100 different Upanishads, but this little book, especially this one, which I should have never given away, um, has a very clear, precise path to follow that helps you open up your intuition and that feeling that we're all connected by love. So, and it's an easy read. You can do it in a day. I regret giving it away because it's just such a go-to book. I got to get another one. My second choice was Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And that one just opened up my whole world. It made everything that I thought about and read about and learned about all the metaphysical, esoterical stuff be super important. I just couldn't get enough of his experiences and the way he tied in logical philosophies and spiritual practices. And Autobiography of a Yogi is a basic, you got to have it in your library if you're a spiritual person.
Nice,
What
nice,
about
nice.
you? Your choices?
Well, for me, my choices, I think it's so funny that we both think we have weird choices. Here's just it's just letting you know that whatever's going to tap into you and your spiritual journey is going to be different from someone else's. For me, my first book is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And what I love about this book is that it breaks down um, your connectivity to the spiritual world in a way that most people can tap into because it's Think and Grow Rich. It's not a whole lot of work. It's Think, Grow Rich. Most people are trying to get some money. But when you read it, this book is really the precursor. It is like the source material for what The Secret became. Right?
Mhm.
You read this book, it tells you basically, it talks about manifesting, it talks about follow through and doing the work, it talks about like how information is going to come through and then what you should do. So if you're wondering like how do you get downloads, if you're wondering how do you like what do you do once you get this information, this book Think and Grow Rich is going to talk to you and tell you about all of that. I can't recommend it enough.
Okay, I want to read it.
Yeah, it's important. It's been around for so long. And actually, a very good friend of mine has a friend whose uncle is Napoleon Hill. So that was really fun to discover that, he's not just some person out there. He's like, just a normal person. I think he was from the DC area who tapped into his spiritual knowing in a way that was not super woo woo. He made it about people growing rich. So my next book is uh, probably more surprising than anyone would think. It's Stephen King's It. And although it is somewhat a book about, a monster that's eating children, what this book really is about, it's about a soul family. It is about love. It is about confidence, overcoming the most horrendous and heinous of challenges and adversity. And I love this book. It really, truly helped me in terms of my relationships and how I looked at the world and my capabilities and how I fit in it. So I recommend all this.
That'll be on my list. And there's something about Stephen King. I know he makes little scary stories, but there are threads of high truth in a lot of his stuff. I haven't read much of it, but what I've read, I find that to be true.
It's always about love in some way, shape, or form, about how it flows and either gets stuck or just morphs into other things, but then saves the day. I just really love that about his writing. So, Tammy, this is kind of bringing us to the end. It's time for the bill. I have had another great conversation and exploration about all things spiritual.
Me too. It's so fun. We love sharing what we learn. And make sure to like, please, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And tell a friend about us because we need more patrons at the Spiritual Diner. We're aiming to grow.
That's right. We prefer that you follow us everywhere, right? Especially on YouTube, because it helps us to reach more people and it's a more open platform. But like and follow us everywhere. We are Spiritual Diner on all platforms. And if you found value in this show, please like and also go back and comment. I know if you're here in the chat, that's one thing, but go out to the actual video and where it says comment, please go ahead and leave a comment. It helps.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to comments because that's where we can shine our gifts.
Yes.
But thank you all for tuning into Spiritual Diner. I'm Tammy Reyes. It's been super fun cooking up this episode for you. And I can't wait till next week when we have a very important entree. Oh boy.
I'm Vosh Bodhi. So please mark your calendars for next week because you already have a reservation for the Spiritual Diner. And next week will be our final show for this particular season. And we are going to be serving up love and fear.
Absolutely.
So until next time, bye everybody. Thanks you for joining us.
Blessings.